When I dialed my son's number that morning, I was smiling without even realizing it. It had been building inside me for weeks, that quiet excitement, that soft anticipation only a mother understands. My son, my only child, was about to start a new chapter of his life, and I had been patiently waiting to be part of it. "Ethan," I said when he answered, trying to sound casual, "have you two decided on a wedding date yet?" There was a pause. Not the kind of pause where someone is thinking, the kind where something is being hidden. Before he could answer, another voice slipped into the call. Smooth, calm, too calm. "Oh, we didn't tell you," his wife said lightly. "We got married yesterday." For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Yesterday, my fingers tightened around the phone. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "We had a small ceremony," she continued, almost cheerfully. "Very intimate. Just close people, close people." The words echoed in my mind like a hollow knock against an empty room. I didn't respond, because suddenly everything I had believed about my place in their lives began to crumble. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the table I had polished just days ago, thinking they might come by to celebrate afterward. I had even bought a new dress, a soft lavender one. I imagined wearing it while sitting in the front row, watching my son say his vows. Instead, I hadn't even been told. Ethan cleared his throat on the other end. "Mom, it was nothing big," he said quickly. "We just didn't want the stress of a large wedding." "Nothing big," I swallowed slowly. "I saw the photos," I said, silence. Thick, uncomfortable, because we both knew what I had seen, her family smiling, celebrating, champagne glasses raised. And me, nowhere, not even a mention. "Oh, those," she laughed softly. "That was just, immediate family." Immediate family, I understood perfectly, I just wasn't part of it. The call ended shortly after, no apology. No explanation, no attempt to fix what had just been broken, just silence. That night I opened my closet. The dress was still there, hanging carefully, untouched. Next to it were the shoes I had bought to match. And in a small box on the shelf, an envelope. Inside was $1,000, my wedding gift to them. Money I had set aside slowly, piece by piece, from my limited savings. I picked up the envelope and held it in my hands. For weeks I had imagined giving it to them with a smile. Now it felt meaningless. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, and for the first time in years I felt like I didn't know my own son. 7 days passed. Not a single call, not a message, nothing. And then on the 8th day my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. I already knew why. Still, I answered. Her tone had changed. Completely. Gone was the confidence. Gone was the lightness. Now there was urgency, even fear. "Marian, the rent is overdue," she said quickly. "The landlord is threatening eviction. We thought you already sent the money." Of course, I leaned back slowly in my chair. For 3 years, I had paid their rent. Every single month. $500 without fail, without complaint. Even when it meant cutting back on my own needs, even when it meant skipping things I wanted. Because I believed I was helping them build a life. But now I finally understood the truth. I wasn't helping, I was expected. I closed my eyes for a moment, then spoke. Calmly, carefully. "Didn't I make myself clear?" I said. There was a pause. "I only help people who consider me important." Silence filled the line, deep, heavy, unavoidable. "Marian, what are you saying?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm saying," I replied, "that you made your choice very clear last week." "That's not fair." "No," I interrupted softly. "What's not fair is being treated like I don't matter until you need something." She didn't speak. Because there was nothing left to say, I ended the call, and as I placed the phone down, I felt something unfamiliar. Not sadness, not anger, something stronger. Control. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting, I was deciding. And that changed everything. The silence after that call didn't feel empty, it felt powerful. For years, my days had revolved around waiting for their messages, anticipating their needs before they even asked, adjusting my life around their emergencies. But that morning, something was different. My phone stayed quiet, and for once, I didn't feel anxious about it. I felt free. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and sat down slowly, letting the warmth settle into my hands. This table had witnessed everything, every bill I had calculated for them, every transfer I had made, every quiet tear I had wiped away when I felt unappreciated. Today, it was witnessing something new. Clarity. I pulled out my bank folder, the one I hadn't properly reviewed in years because I trusted myself not to question my generosity. But now I needed to see it. Every number, every sacrifice. Every silent yes that had cost me more than money. I opened the folder and started calculating. Rent, $500 a month for 3 years, $18,000. Groceries and essentials. At least $200 monthly, another $7,200. Furniture, repairs, gifts, emergencies, the numbers kept stacking. By the time I finished, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the final total. Over $32,000. $32,000. My hands rested on the table, still, steady, but inside something burned. Not regret, not anymore, understanding that money wasn't just money. It was years of effort, of saving, of denying myself simple comforts. And for what? To be excluded, to be forgotten, to be labeled not close. My phone buzzed suddenly, breaking the quiet. Ethan. I looked at his name on the screen. Once I would have answered before the second ring. Now I watched it ring and ring until it stopped. A minute later it rang again. This time it was her. I didn't answer that one either. Then a message appeared. Mom, please pick up. We need to talk. I read it once, then deleted it. No reply, no hesitation. That version of me, the one who rushed, who explained, who fixed things, was gone. By noon, I stepped outside for a walk. It felt strange at first, like I had forgotten how to exist without a purpose tied to them. Usually my outings had a reason: the bank for their transfers, the grocery store for their food, the pharmacy for their needs. Today, I walked because I wanted to. The air felt different, lighter. I passed the small park where Ethan used to play as a child. I stopped for a moment, watching a young boy run toward his mother, laughing, arms wide open. I remembered those days vividly. The way Ethan used to cling to me, the way he would say, "You're the best mom in the world." Somewhere along the way, that love had changed. Or maybe I had changed it myself. Maybe I had taught him that love meant giving endlessly, without limits, without boundaries. Maybe I had shown him that I would always be there, no matter how I was treated. And now, he believed it. I kept walking until I reached the bank. I stood outside for a moment, looking at the glass doors. Inside, I had spent countless hours transferring money to them, ensuring their lives stayed comfortable while mine quietly shrank. Today, I walked in with a different purpose. Mr. Dalton, the branch manager, greeted me with a warm smile. "Mrs. Hayes, good to see you. How can I help you today?" I sat down across from him and placed my folder on the desk. "I need to cancel all automatic transfers," I said calmly. His expression shifted slightly, surprised. "Are you sure? These have been active for quite some time." "I'm sure." He nodded and began processing the request. As he worked, my phone buzzed again in my bag, then again, and again. I didn't check it. For the first time, their urgency wasn't my responsibility. "Is everything all right?" Mr. Dalton asked gently. I looked at him and smiled faintly. For the first time in a long while, yes. He handed me the confirmation papers. "Everything is canceled. No one else has access to your accounts." I took the documents, feeling something shift inside me, like a door closing on one chapter of my life. When I stepped back outside, the world felt different. Not because it had changed, but because I had. I went home slowly, taking my time, not rushing for anyone. But as I turned onto my street, I noticed something that made me stop. 2 cars were parked outside my house. One of them I recognized immediately, Ethan's, the other hers. My chest tightened slightly, not with fear, but with anticipation. They were here. Of course they were. I parked a little further down and sat in my car for a moment, watching the front door. They hadn't waited for permission. They never did. I took a deep breath, stepped out, and walked toward my house. Whatever was about to happen, it would not be the same as before, because I wasn't the same anymore. I didn't rush. That was the first difference. The old me would have hurried, heart racing, already preparing explanations, already softening my tone before even stepping inside. But now I walked at my own pace. The sound of my shoes against the pavement felt louder than usual, like each step was announcing something new. When I reached the front door, I noticed it was slightly ajar. Of course it was. They still had their keys. For a brief second, a familiar feeling tried to creep in: anxiety, that instinct to keep the peace, but it didn't settle. It passed. I pushed the door open slowly. The scene inside stopped me for a moment, not because it shocked me, but because it confirmed everything I had already realized. Ethan was sitting on the couch, leaning forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like the weight of the world was on his shoulders. Lena was pacing back and forth, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, her face tight with frustration. And there was a third person, a man in a gray suit standing by my dining table, flipping through papers, my personal documents. I stepped inside fully, closing the door behind me with a firm click. What exactly is going on in my house? My voice cut through the room like a blade. All three of them turned toward me at once. Lena was the first to react. "Oh, good, you're finally here," she said quickly, as if she had been waiting for me to fix something. "We've been trying to reach you all day." I ignored her tone and looked directly at the man. "And you are?" He stepped forward with a practiced smile, extending his hand. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Hayes. I'm Daniel Carter, a legal advisor. Your son and daughter-in-law asked me to assist with the current situation." I didn't take his hand. Instead, I walked past him, gathered the papers he had spread across my table, and held them firmly against my chest. "You have no right to touch my documents." Ethan stood up quickly. "Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder?" I let out a quiet breath. "Harder for who?" He hesitated just for a second. That was all it took for me to see it clearly. Not concern, not love, pressure. Lena stepped in, her voice softening artificially. "We're just worried about you," she said, trying to reach for my arm. I stepped back before she could touch me. "Worried?" I repeated calmly. "Is that what this is?" The man in the suit cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hayes, your family has expressed concerns regarding your recent behavior, financial decisions, lack of communication, sudden changes in routine." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You mean I stopped paying for their lives?" Silence, thick, immediate. Lena's expression hardened. "That's not fair," she snapped. "We've always been close to you." I looked at her for a long moment. "Close enough to invite to your wedding?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. Ethan looked away. Again, that silence said more than anything else. I turned back to the lawyer. "Let me make something very clear. I am perfectly capable of making my own decisions." "Of course," he replied smoothly, "but sometimes when there are sudden behavioral shifts." "Behavioral shifts?" I interrupted, my voice still calm but sharper now. "You mean setting boundaries?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly. You just cut us off overnight. That's not normal." I took a step closer to him. "You know what's not normal, Ethan?" My voice dropped slightly. "A grown man depending on his mother for rent while calling her not special enough to attend his wedding." That hit. I saw it in his face. A flicker, guilt, but it didn't last. Lena stepped forward again, more aggressive now. "This isn't about the wedding," she said. "This is about your behavior. You're isolating yourself. You're making irrational decisions." "Irrational?" I repeated softly. "Yes," she said, crossing her arms. "Cutting us off like this, it's extreme. It's not like you." I held her gaze. "You're right." A pause. "It's not like me." Another step forward. "That's exactly the point." The lawyer shifted slightly, sensing the tension rising. "Mrs. Hayes, perhaps it would be helpful if we discussed a temporary arrangement. Something to ensure your finances are managed responsibly during this transition." I stared at him. "What kind of arrangement?" He pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it gently on the table. "A power of attorney. It would allow your son to assist in managing your accounts just until things stabilize." For a moment, no one spoke. I looked down at the folder, then back at them. Ethan avoided my eyes again. Lena watched me carefully, waiting for me to fold, waiting for the old version of me to return. I picked up the folder, opened it, flipped through a few pages, then closed it slowly, and without a word, dropped it straight into the trash bin beside the table. The sound echoed in the room. Lena gasped. "What are you doing?" she snapped. I met her gaze calmly. "Ending this conversation?" Ethan's voice rose. "Mom, you can't just—" "I can," I said firmly, "and I am." The lawyer stepped forward slightly, trying to regain control. "Mrs. Hayes, I strongly advise you to reconsider. If your family believes you're incapable of managing your affairs," I looked directly at him, "then they're welcome to try and prove it." That shut him up for a second. Lena's face changed completely then. The softness disappeared. The mask dropped. "This isn't over," she said coldly. "You can't just shut us out like this. We have rights." I tilted my head slightly. "Rights to what exactly?" She didn't answer. because she couldn't say it out loud, not without exposing everything. Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mom, if you keep going like this, you're going to end up alone. There it was, the final card, fear. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something inside me settle completely, not break. Not hurt, just settle. Ethan, I said quietly, I've been alone for a long time. He froze. The difference now is that I finally know it. No one spoke after that. I walked to the door and opened it. You need to leave. Lena didn't move at first. You're making a mistake. I held the door open. No, I've been making mistakes for 3 years. A beat. This isn't one of them. The lawyer was the first to step out. Then Lena, stiff with anger. Ethan lingered for a second longer as if he wanted to say something, but whatever it was, he swallowed it. And then he walked out too. I closed the door behind them. This time I locked it. And for the first time in years, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. The next morning didn't feel like the aftermath of a fight. It felt like the beginning of something unfamiliar and quiet. Too quiet maybe, but not the kind that makes your chest tight. This was different. This was the kind of silence that lets you hear your own thoughts again. I woke up before the alarm, staring at the ceiling for a few seconds, expecting the usual wave of anxiety. The list of things I needed to fix. The money I needed to send. The problems that weren't mine but had somehow become my responsibility. But nothing came. No panic, no urgency, just stillness. I sat up slowly. That's when it hit me. For the first time in years, no one was depending on me to survive that day. And instead of fear, I felt something almost foreign, relief. I walked into the kitchen and made coffee, taking my time with every step. No rushing. No checking my phone in between. No rehearsing conversations in my head. When the coffee was ready, I didn't take it to the table like I always did. Instead, I stepped outside to the porch. The morning air was crisp, calm, honest. I sat down and took a sip. It tasted better than usual, not because it was different, but because I was. Halfway through my cup, my phone buzzed on the table inside. I didn't move immediately. I already knew who it was. I finished my coffee first, then I went back inside. Missed calls, 7 from Ethan, 5 from Lena, 2 unknown numbers. I stared at the screen for a moment, then placed the phone face down. Not today. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into chaos. Not anymore. By mid-morning, I was already out of the house. My first stop was the locksmith, a small shop just a few blocks away. The owner, Mr. Delgado, looked up as I walked in. "Morning, Mrs. Hayes," he said with a friendly nod. "What can I do for you?" "I need every lock in my house changed," I replied without hesitation. He blinked, slightly surprised. "Everything? Everything?" He studied my face for a second, then nodded. "All right, I'll send someone over this afternoon." "I'd prefer you do it personally," I said. "And I want the highest security locks you have." That got his full attention. "Understood," he said. "I'll be there myself." As I left the shop, I felt it again, that strange lightness. Every step I took was a step further away from who I used to be. Next stop, the bank. This time I didn't hesitate outside. I walked straight in. Mr. Clark, the branch manager, greeted me with a warm smile. "Mrs. Hayes, good to see you again." "Good to see you too," I said. "I need to make some changes." He gestured toward his office. "Of course, come in." Once we sat down, I got straight to the point. "I want to close all shared access permissions on my accounts," I said. "And I want to ensure no one can request information about them without my direct authorization." His expression shifted slightly, not concern, but attention. "Has something happened?" I met his eyes. "Yes, but I'm handling it." He nodded immediately, no questions, no judgment, just respect. "We'll take care of everything," he said. As he worked through the system, my phone buzzed again and again. And again, I didn't even look at it this time. "Mrs. Hayes," he said after a few minutes, "all access points have been removed. Your accounts are now fully secured." I exhaled slowly. "Thank you." Then I paused. "One more thing," he looked up. "I'd like to open a new account, separate from everything else." "Of course," he said. "For savings?" I shook my head slightly. "For me." He smiled faintly as if he understood more than I had said. By the time I left the bank, my phone battery had nearly drained from the constant calls. Still, I hadn't answered a single one, and I wasn't going to. That afternoon, Mr. Delgado arrived exactly on time. He worked efficiently, replacing every lock, double-checking each door and window. When he finished, he handed me a fresh set of keys. "No one's getting in without your permission now," he said. I held the keys in my hand, feeling their weight. It wasn't just metal, it was control. "That's exactly how it should be," I replied. After he left, I walked through the house slowly, room by room, noticing things I hadn't paid attention to in years. The way the light hit the walls, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the absence of tension. This house didn't feel like a place I had to maintain for others anymore. It felt like mine again. Later that evening, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera before opening it. "Eleanor." I opened the door with a small smile. "I thought you might need this," she said, holding up a small container. "Homemade soup," I laughed softly. "You're starting a habit?" "Good ones are hard to break," she replied. We sat together in the living room, talking about nothing and everything at the same time. No pressure, no expectations, just conversation. At one point, she looked at me carefully. "You're different today," she said. I tilted my head slightly. "How?" "Lighter," she replied. "Like you finally put something down." I thought about that for a second, then nodded. "I did." She smiled. "Good." After she left, I stood by the window for a while, watching the street. No cars, no movement, no waiting for someone to show up and demand something from me, just peace. My phone buzzed one last time on the table. This time I picked it up, a text from Ethan. "Mom, please just talk to us." I stared at it for a long moment, then slowly typed back, "I will when you're ready to talk, not take." I hit send and turned the phone off, not out of anger, not out of fear, but because, for once, I didn't need to be available to anyone but myself. The calm didn't last, not because it wasn't real, but because people like Ethan and Lena don't just walk away when control slips through their fingers. They escalate. And I knew that, I just didn't expect how quickly it would happen. It started 3 days later. I had just finished watering the plants in the backyard when my phone lit up again. This time it wasn't Ethan. It wasn't Lena. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something told me this one was different. I answered. "Mrs. Hayes?" A professional female voice said. "Yes. This is Officer Grant from Community Welfare Services. We've received a report requesting a wellness check. Are you available to speak?" My hand tightened slightly around the phone. There it was. The next move, not apologies, not reflection, pressure, just from a different angle. "I'm at home," I said calmly. "You can come by." 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I checked the camera first. A woman in her 40s, neatly dressed, holding a folder. I opened the door. "Mrs. Hayes?" she asked politely. "That's me. I'm here just to make sure everything is all right," she said. "It won't take long." I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around briefly, not suspicious, just observant. "Nice home," she said. "Thank you." We sat in the living room. She opened her folder. "We received a report that there may have been sudden behavioral changes, financial decisions, withdrawal from family, installation of security measures." I almost smiled. Lena had chosen her words carefully, but not carefully enough. "Would you like some tea?" I asked. The woman blinked slightly, caught off guard. Sure." I went to the kitchen, prepared 2 cups, and returned without rushing. No defensiveness. No panic, just control. I handed her the cup and sat across from her. "You can ask whatever you need," I said. She studied me for a moment before continuing. "Have you recently cut off financial support to your family?" "Yes." "May I ask why?" I took a sip of tea before answering. "Because I realized I was being used." She paused. "Used how?" "Financially, emotionally, consistently." I didn't rush the explanation. I didn't dramatize it either. I simply told her the truth. The rent payments, the constant requests. The wedding, the words, "only special people." The attempt to pressure me into signing legal control over my own money. I watched her expression change slowly, not dramatically, but enough. Enough to know she was starting to see the situation clearly. "And the security system?" she asked. "Installed after they entered my home without permission and brought a lawyer to assess me," I replied. "I chose to protect myself." She nodded slowly, writing something down. "Do you manage your finances independently?" "Yes." "Do you understand your accounts, expenses, and assets?" I almost laughed at how absurd the question felt, but I didn't show it. "Better than ever." She closed the folder after a moment. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, her tone softer now, "based on this conversation, I don't see any immediate concern regarding your well-being." I leaned back slightly. "Because there isn't one?" She hesitated before adding, "If I may, situations like this can become complicated when family is involved." I met her gaze. "They already have." She gave me a small, understanding nod. "I'll be closing this report," she said. "But if anything changes or if you feel unsafe, you can contact us directly." "Thank you," I said sincerely. When she left, I stood by the door for a moment, letting everything settle. They had tried to paint me as unstable, confused, vulnerable, and it hadn't worked. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt something else. Clarity. This wasn't about misunderstanding anymore. This wasn't about hurt feelings or bad communication. This was strategy. They were trying to take control legally, financially, completely, and now I understood something important. They weren't going to stop. Not unless I made it impossible for them to continue. That evening, I called my lawyer, not because I was scared, but because I was ready. "I think it's time," I said. "I agree," he replied immediately. "We move from defense to structure." The next day, I sat across from him in his office reviewing documents, not reactive decisions, proactive ones, asset protection, legal boundaries, documentation of every interaction. Every attempt, every violation. "They've already crossed several lines," he said, flipping through notes. "Attempted coercion, unauthorized entry, false reporting. If they escalate further, it strengthens your position." I nodded slowly. "Then let them." He looked at me carefully. "You're not afraid of confrontation anymore, are you?" I thought about that for a second, then shook my head. No, and it was true because something had shifted completely. I wasn't trying to fix the relationship anymore. I wasn't trying to be understood. I wasn't waiting for them to change. I was protecting what was mine. My space, my peace, my life. When I got home that afternoon, I noticed a car parked across the street. Engine off, windows slightly tinted. Watching, I didn't panic, I didn't confront. I simply walked inside, locked the door, and checked the cameras. 2 hours later, it was still there. I picked up my phone and took a picture through the window, then sent it directly to my lawyer. No emotions, just evidence. That night, as I sat in the living room, the house felt different again, but not in a bad way. Stronger, like it wasn't just a place anymore. It was a boundary. And for the first time, I wasn't hoping they would come back and apologize. I was prepared for whatever came next. The lawsuit arrived on a Tuesday morning. Not by surprise, but still, it hit differently when it became real. A formal envelope. My name printed cleanly across the front. No emotion, no hesitation, just intent. I stood in the hallway holding it for a few seconds before opening it. Not because I was afraid, but because I already knew what it would say. They had decided to go all the way. I opened it slowly and read every line carefully. Petition for guardianship, claim of mental incompetence, request for financial control, signed, filed, official. I didn't feel panic. I didn't feel anger either, just a deep, steady understanding settling into place. This wasn't about fixing anything anymore. This was war, but not the kind fought with shouting or tears. This was the quiet kind. The kind fought with evidence, patience, and precision. I placed the papers neatly on the table and picked up my phone. "It's filed," I told my lawyer. "I expected that," he replied calmly. "We're ready." And we were, because unlike them, I hadn't been reacting. I had been preparing. By that afternoon, I was sitting in his office again, reviewing everything step by step. "Their argument is simple," he explained. "They're going to claim you've had a sudden decline in judgment, that your decisions are irrational, influenced, possibly unstable." I nodded. "And we prove the opposite." "Exactly?" He slid a folder toward me. "We already have documentation of your financial history, your independence, your consistency. Now we reinforce it?" The next few days became structured, intentional. Every action had purpose. Medical evaluations scheduled, financial reports organized, statements prepared, not to prove I was perfect, just to prove I was capable, and that was enough. The medical evaluation was the easiest part. I walked into the clinic calmly, answered every question clearly, completed every test without hesitation. Memory, logic, decision-making. All of it. When the doctor finished reviewing everything, she smiled slightly. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, "there is absolutely no indication of cognitive impairment." I held her gaze. "I know," she nodded, as if she understood there was more behind that statement than just confidence. Back home, the house felt quieter than usual, but not empty. Focused. I had stopped waiting for calls, stopped checking messages. Whatever they wanted to say now, they would say it in court. 2 days later, I saw Ethan's car again. This time, he didn't stay across the street. He pulled directly into the driveway. I watched through the camera as he stepped out, hesitating for a moment before walking to the door. He rang the bell, once, twice, then knocked. I didn't open immediately. I let him stand there. Not out of spite, but because I no longer rushed to meet his needs. Eventually, I opened the door. We stood facing each other. No lawyer, no Lena, just him. "Mom," he started, his voice quieter than I had heard it in a long time. I didn't respond right away. I simply waited. He looked tired, not physically but mentally, pressured, cornered. "It didn't have to go this far," he said. I tilted my head slightly. "No," I replied calmly, "it didn't." A pause. "Then why are you letting it?" he asked, frustration creeping into his voice. I met his eyes. "I'm not the one who filed the lawsuit, Ethan." That hit him. He looked away for a second, then back at me. "We're just trying to protect you." I almost smiled, but not kindly. "From what?" He didn't answer because he couldn't. The truth didn't support him anymore. "From independence," I continued quietly. "From making my own decisions, from making bad ones," he snapped. "Like cutting off your own family?" There it was again, that word, family, used like leverage. I took a slow breath. Family doesn't try to take legal control of each other's lives. He ran his hand through his hair, pacing slightly now. "You're being influenced. I can see it. This isn't you." I watched him carefully. "You're right again," I said. He stopped. Looked at me. "It's not." Silence stretched between us. Then I stepped slightly to the side, but not to invite him in, just enough to make my point clear. "This version of me," I said calmly, "is the one that stopped ignoring reality." His expression tightened. "Lena said you'd say something like that?" I nodded slowly. "Of course she did." Another pause. He looked at me again, softer this time. "You're really going through with this?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes," he swallowed. "Even if it means losing us?" And that question would have broken me a month ago, but now it didn't land the same. I held his gaze steadily. "I already lost you," I said quietly. "The moment I became useful instead of valued." He didn't argue, he didn't deny it, he just stood there for a long moment. Then finally he nodded once, small, almost unnoticeable. "All right," he said under his breath. Not agreement, not acceptance, just acknowledgement. He turned and walked back to his car. I watched him leave, not with sadness, not with anger, just clarity. The trial date was set for 3 weeks later. And for the first time since all of this began, I wasn't hoping for a different outcome. I wasn't hoping for reconciliation. I wasn't hoping they would stop. I was ready to finish it, completely. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not physically, but in the way everything felt stripped down to facts, decisions, and consequences. No emotions mattered here unless they could be proven. No relationships mattered unless they held legal weight. And that worked in my favor. I walked in with steady steps, my lawyer beside me, my posture straight, not forced, just natural. I wasn't here to defend myself as a victim. I was here as someone who knew exactly what was happening. Across the room, Ethan and Lena were already seated. Formal, composed, prepared. Lena glanced at me briefly, her expression unreadable, but there was tension in her shoulders. Ethan didn't look at me at all, not once. Their lawyer stood beside them, flipping through documents with quiet confidence. He looked like a man who had done this many times before, but this time he didn't have the stronger case. When the judge entered, the entire room shifted. Everything became still, focused, final. The proceedings began. Their lawyer spoke first. His voice was smooth, controlled, crafted to sound reasonable. "Your Honor, we are here today out of concern. Concern for Mrs. Alina Hayes, whose recent actions indicate a significant decline in judgment and stability." I listened without reacting. Every word he used was intentional. Sudden financial withdrawal, isolation from family, paranoid behavior including unnecessary security measures. It would have sounded convincing if it wasn't so incomplete, because context changes everything. Then came their witnesses. Lena was first. She walked to the stand slowly, already emotional before she even spoke. Her voice trembled just enough to feel real. "She's changed," Lena said. "Completely. She used to be loving, generous, present. And now she's distant, suspicious, angry." I watched her carefully, not her words, but her timing, her pauses, her control. It was practiced. We're just worried about her, she added softly. We don't want her to hurt herself or be taken advantage of. The performance was almost perfect. Almost. Then came the cross-examination. My lawyer stood calmly, flipping one page in his notes. Mrs. Bennet, he began evenly, can you tell the court how often you contacted Mrs. Hayes without requesting financial assistance? Lena froze for half a second, barely noticeable but enough. We spoke regularly, she said quickly. That wasn't my question, he replied. How many of those conversations did not involve money? Silence. The kind that stretches just long enough to shift the room. I don't recall exact numbers, she said. Would it be fair to say most of your contact involved financial requests? No answer. Because she couldn't lie clearly enough under pressure. Let's move on, my lawyer said smoothly. Is it also true that you and your husband held a wedding ceremony without inviting Mrs. Hayes? Lena stiffened. It was a small, private event. Private enough to exclude the person who financially supported you for 3 years? Another silence. The cracks were showing now, clear, undeniable. Ethan was next. Watching him take the stand, that was harder than I expected. Not because I doubted myself, but because I remembered who he used to be. He avoided my eyes again as he spoke. My mother isn't acting like herself, he said. She's making decisions that don't make sense. We believe she's being influenced. Influenced by whom? My lawyer asked. Neighbors, people around her, Ethan replied, vague, weak, easy to dismantle. Mr. Hayes, my lawyer continued, are you currently financially independent? Ethan hesitated. We were receiving support. Answer the question, my lawyer said firmly. No, and how much financial support have you received over the past 3 years? Ethan shifted uncomfortably. I don't know the exact number. My lawyer placed a document in front of him. Would $30,000 refresh your memory? The room went still again. Ethan didn't respond. Is it also true, my lawyer continued, that when this financial support ended, you and your wife sought legal control over your mother's accounts? Ethan's silence said everything. Then came our side. The doctor who conducted my evaluation testified clearly, precisely, no hesitation. Mrs. Hayes shows no signs of cognitive impairment. Her decision-making ability is intact. Her reasoning is above average for her age. No emotion, just facts. Then my financial records were presented, organized, detailed, consistent, not reckless behavior, not instability, just a woman managing her own life. Finally, it was my turn. I stood and walked to the stand without rushing, without looking at Ethan, without looking at Lena, just forward. Focused. Mrs. Hayes, my lawyer said, can you explain why you chose to stop financially supporting your son and daughter-in-law? I took a breath, not because I needed it, but because I wanted my words to land exactly as they should. Because I realized I was not being loved, I said calmly. I was being relied on. The room was silent. There's a difference, I continued. Love doesn't disappear when money does, but theirs did. I let that sit, not dramatic. Just true, do you believe your decisions are rational? Yes. Do you understand the consequences of your actions? Completely. Then their lawyer stood for cross-examination. He tried to shift the narrative. Mrs. Hayes, would you agree that cutting off your family entirely is an extreme decision? I met his gaze. No. A pause. He adjusted his stance. You don't think it's extreme to isolate yourself from your own son? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't react emotionally. I didn't isolate myself, I said. I removed myself from being used. That ended it. There wasn't much left to twist. The judge listened to everything without interruption, careful, observant. When both sides finished, the room fell into a heavy silence. The kind where everything has already been decided even before it's spoken. The judge looked down at the documents, then up. This court finds no evidence of mental incompetence, he said clearly. Mrs. Alina Hayes is fully capable of managing her own affairs. A breath left my chest, but not from relief, from closure. The request for guardianship is denied. Final, clean, done. I didn't look at Ethan, I didn't look at Lena, I didn't need to, because whatever was left between us had already ended long before this moment. And now legally it was over too. Winning didn't feel loud. There was no rush of triumph, no dramatic sense of victory, just quiet, deep, steady quiet, the kind that settles into your bones and stays there. When I stepped out of the courthouse, the air felt different. Not lighter, clearer, like something that had been hanging over me for years had finally been cut loose. My lawyer walked beside me, closing his briefcase. "It's over," he said simply. I nodded. "Yes," I replied. And for the first time, I truly meant it. Behind us, I could hear voices, Ethan's, Lena's, their lawyers, but I didn't turn around. There was nothing left for me there, no explanation that would change anything. No apology that would undo what had already been done. I walked forward, that was enough. The next few days were quiet again, but not uncertain like before. This time, the silence felt permanent, solid, earned. No more unexpected visits, no more calls from unknown numbers, no more pressure hiding behind concern. It was finished. Completely. I returned to my routine, but it wasn't the same routine I had before all of this. This one was mine. Mornings started slowly. Coffee on the porch, watching the street wake up without feeling like I had to be part of anyone else's chaos. Afternoons were spent doing things I had ignored for years, reading, walking, even sitting in stillness without guilt. I began noticing small things again. The way sunlight moved across the floor, the quiet ticking of the clock, the sound of my own breathing without tension behind it. Freedom isn't loud, it's subtle. It shows up in moments like that. About a week later, I saw Ethan's car one last time, not parked, not waiting, just passing by, slow, almost hesitant. I stood by the window and watched it disappear down the street. No anger, no sadness, just acceptance. Some endings don't come with closure, they come with clarity, and that's enough. Alina came by later that evening with her usual calm presence. She sat across from me, studying my face for a moment. "You're different again," she said. I smiled faintly. "How this time?" "Peaceful," she replied. I thought about that, then nodded. "I am." She leaned back slightly. "Do you miss them?" The question didn't hit like it would have before. I took my time answering. "I miss who I thought they were," I said honestly, "not who they chose to be." Alina nodded, understanding without needing more. "That's the hardest part," she said, "letting go of the version that never really existed." We sat in silence after that, but it wasn't heavy. It was shared. That night after she left, I walked through the house again. The same rooms, the same walls, but everything felt different. Not because the house had changed, but because I had. I stopped in the hallway looking at the door. The same door they had walked through so many times. The same door they had tried to use to take control of my life. Now it was just a door again, nothing more. I locked it gently, not out of fear, but out of habit, out of choice. A few days later, I made another decision, not out of reaction, but intention. I met with my lawyer again. "I want everything structured clearly," I said. "My assets, my future, my boundaries." He nodded. "We can set everything exactly the way you want." And we did, not to keep anyone out, but to ensure no one could ever force their way in again. That was the difference. Weeks passed, then months. Life didn't suddenly become extraordinary. It became something better, stable, honest, mine. I started reconnecting with things I had left behind, old hobbies, old friends, even parts of myself I had ignored for years. I laughed more, not loudly, but genuinely. I slept better, not heavily, but peacefully. And slowly, the past stopped feeling like something I needed to carry. One evening, as the sun was setting, I sat on the porch again with my coffee. The same place where everything had started to shift. The same place where I had first chosen myself. The sky was calm. The street was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I had kept. My independence, my dignity, my clarity, and most importantly, myself. I leaned back slightly, letting the silence settle around me. Not empty, not lonely, just complete. Some people think strength is loud. That it shows up in fights, in arguments, in proving something to others. But it doesn't. Real strength is quieter than that. It's the moment you stop explaining yourself. The moment you stop trying to be understood by people who never intended to understand you. The moment you choose peace over permission. I didn't win because they lost. I won because I stopped losing myself, and that was everything.